recovery? Is his status any different than what you told us back in the spring?
Yes, he's reached the next threshold, but nothing's changed to this point.
James, you mentioned him yesterday, Blake Corum. What's unique about the challenge of trying to stop him as compared to the other backs he faces?
Yeah, he's just a super mature and super productive back. He knows how to run and get positive yardage. There's very few negative yardage plays with him. Even though he's a small back, he always seems to fall forward. He is strong and powerful. I remember all the way back to high school, like he was the guy that'd get up every morning at 4 a.m. to go lift and train. Went to school in Baltimore, lived in Northern Virginia, just a really committed young man, and obviously has had a damn good college career so far. But he's just super productive. And I think he understands how to play the position. So, and he does a lot of things. He does a lot of things well. But I think in general, you respect the production, And then if he gets an opportunity, he has the ability to take it the distance too.
James, how much did Nick and Katron kind of change the margin of error for the rest of the running game, like the line, the play calling, everything like that?
Yeah, I think obviously whenever you have good backs, whenever you have special backs, they can be erasers for you and help a lot of issues, and they have helped with that as well. So has Kevon. I don't think there's any doubt that players can be erasers. Whether it's a quarterback being able to extend a play, whether it's a running back being able to make somebody miss, whether it's the unblocked defender at the second level, that there's always going to be one of those guys, or it's somebody that makes a good play up front and defeats a block and comes clean. Those guys can be erasers.
James, we saw Tank Smith on special teams against Northwestern. What should we expect his role to be moving forward with Devin Ford's departure, and how that whole running back room kind of handle their non-depth chart?
The what?
How have the running backs handled the new depth chart, specifically Tank Smith, and what's his role going to be moving forward?
Yeah, about what you've seen, he's been a guy that's done a really good job here in his role, whether that is with the travel squad or whether that's with the developmental squad or on special teams. He's one of those guys. He's a really good natural football player. The game makes sense to him. He's one of the more productive guys whenever we do scrimmages or drills, whether it's a tackling drill with the defense. He's an extremely valuable guy and has kind of embraced his role. But I don't, at this stage, I don't see his role changing a whole lot as of right now.
James, we had a chance to talk to Manny tomorrow. How has he handled that transition from head coach back to assistant? What's the dynamic like with him on the sideline? And what are the advantages of having a former head coach as one of your assistants?
He's been really good. I think the biggest thing, is he's got a presence when he addresses the defense. But a lot of things that we do, we're very intentional about teaching football. So a lot of people, you'll have a team meeting and then you break up and the defense presents to the defense and the offense presents to the offense and special teams presents to special teams. And we do that as well. But I also think there, is an aspect of teaching football. I think it's good for our offensive players to hear what the defense is trying to do and trying to stop. And same thing for our defense players from our offense. So Manny, not only does he have real good presence of getting up and he communicates really well to our defense, but I think it's been really good for our offense to hear some of the things as well. Sometimes it's kind of like being a coach's kid, where you're growing up around football and you're hearing things and you're picking up things that you don't even realize you're picking up at the time. That's the same thing with our offensive players, being able to listen to Manny talk about defense and what they're trying to do and why. So it's been really good, been really good discussions. But I think more than anything, he's really been the head coach of the defense in how we're structured, in a lot of ways the way Brent did as well for a long period of time.
James, you mentioned it. Thank you. James, yesterday you talked about Michigan's offensive line, kind of piggybacking off Johnny's question with Blake Corum.
What the past couple seasons, what do you attribute that success? Like, what do they do so well? What makes it so effective?
I think it's probably a combination of what both of you are talking about. When you have a back that can be an eraser, where you're able to stay on schedule and stay out of third and long and obvious passing situations. They're trying to control the game, and you do that up front on both sides of the ball. Obviously, last year with the two defensive ends really had a significant impact on their defense, but they've been able to, like I talked about yesterday, they've been able to build on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, they've recruited well, they've developed well, and again, their style of play of trying to stay balanced on offense, both run and pass, keep the game from a scoring perspective. Where they're in control of the game, you look at first score, first drive, first play of a drive, all those things, a lead at the end of the first half. If you study this team and this head coach, all those things are a big factor in how they want to play. So combination of really all of it, recruiting well, developing well, the style of offense they play, the style of complementary football they play as well, has served them well.
Nick, what have Nick and Catron, they battled through and overcame some adversity against Northwestern with the weather and the turnovers. How have you seen them respond over the last couple of weeks, and what do you see that tells you they're ready to go into Michigan as true freshmen?
Yeah, well, they're not true freshmen anymore. It's game 5, so all these guys, nobody's a true freshman anymore. We're far enough into the season that you stop talking about those things. They're no longer rookies. They've played enough football that they know what it takes and what the expectation is. The negative is it's kind of like our PAT field goal. We were giving up some pressures and then we gave up a block. Well, when you put that on film and people see a weakness, they're going to attack it until you've proven that you've solved the problem. And it's no different than that. If you put the ball on the ground, then people feel like there's an opportunity to do it, and they're going to go after it a little bit harder than they normally will because they think there's a greater opportunity. So we're going to have to be ready. There's no doubt about it. We've worked on it hard. As you guys know, we had done as good of a job as anybody. I think we were number 2 in the country in turnover margin, but we sure to heck, I almost said something else, we sure to heck weren't that game. So they understand that, though, and Jaywan's done a good job of coaching it as well. The other thing that we've talked about is, it's not just them. It's finishing blocks so a guy doesn't fall off and get his arm in there. It's some of the things that we can do from a scheme perspective. It's covering down on run plays. It's following out fakes as the quarterback. No different than some interceptions aren't just on the quarterback. It's protection. It's decision making by the quarterback. It's receivers creating separation. There are all those things that go into it. They're team stats, but obviously individuals can impact it.
James, Tyler Warren didn't get to play against Northwestern. We've saw him on the practice field the last couple of weeks. Is he going to be able to go Saturday?
Yeah, again, as you guys know, and I know for 9 years you keep asking me questions about injuries, and I know you're somewhat new. I'm always, like you guys, and I'm not telling you how to do your jobs. You ask me a question about whether a guy's going to play, I'm going to say yes, he's going to play the game, whether he is or not. Because I'm not telling Michigan who's available and who's not. And I got into this a couple years and got chastised, and it's not my job to tell you what questions to ask. We're just telling you, ask a question about injuries. I'm not getting into it. So, again, I'm going to keep my opinions to myself. But
2 more, we'll start with Calista.
James, you talked about being physical and violent a little bit yesterday. Through the last 2 practices, are you happy with what the guys have brought to the table, what you've seen to do, and what they're going to bring to the table on Saturday?
yeah, I think so. We've I think done a better job of that. Consistently. This year, this is going to be a physical game. This is going to be big boy ball on both sides of the ball, and we understand. We understand what we're getting into. Again, we got a ton of respect for these guys, and we'll find out on Saturday. But we've practiced that way, and I think for the most part this year we've played that way. We're gonna have to do it on Saturday.
James, PJ, how is this defense different? How is the locker room different when he's an active, participating member of this defense?
Yeah, it's kind of like the running backs, right? If you have really good players that are experienced players and seasoned players and consistently do their jobs, especially at that position, it kind of allows everything behind them to go right. It may be in the pass game where maybe he's not getting the sack, but in a twist package, he's drawing the double team or creating a pick that opens up a twist for a defensive end or the 3 technique. It's in the run game. The linebackers are confident that he's going to be in the A gap and they can focus their attention on the B gap and be downhill and be aggressive and not having to worry about covering for somebody that spins out of their gap trying to make a play or lacks discipline. And you know, as you guys know, whether it's Coach Belichick or whatever, that's been something that's, kind of been kind of the buzzwords in football about do your job. And, whether it's offense or defense, sometimes it's easier to kind of talk about it on defense because typically you're gap sound where everybody's got a gap, especially if you're a 4-down front instead of a 3-down front. You don't have anybody 2-gapping and things like that. Guys like PJ, that as coaches and as players and as linebackers, that you have a ton of confidence in that this guy's going to do his job day in and day out. And that's kind of where we came up with, I don't know if it's a big deal to you guys or the fans or anybody else, but this Keystone Award is something that's really important to me. Obviously, it represents some things in the state. When you talk about Keystone, try to educate our players about what that is. You're talking about, the most important piece in architecture that holds an arc together, and nobody really notices it or values it. And that's kind of, a guy like PJ. He may not show up dramatically on the stat sheet, but as a football program, as coaches and players, and I think, when you talk to NFL people and truly study the game and understand how highly he's playing and doing his job, there's a ton of value in it. And those Keystone Awards that we give out each week on offense, defense, and special teams are for those types of guys that may not show up in the stat sheet, but we're not the defense or the offense or the team in general that we need to be without those guys.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.